In the 11th grade, we had a new teacher of pre-conscription training for young men. He was a very serious man, strict, did not like jokes, spoke short and to the point, had been in hot spots, had been wounded, a soldier, in a word. Not everyone liked him, but he knew his job well, and he was a very interesting conversationalist, in my opinion. I'll just call him Teacher. We used to ask him at lessons, "Teacher, tell us about the war. Is it scary? Is it hard to pull the trigger?" He would tell us, although he obviously did not want to answer many questions. One day he told us a terrible story. I'll tell you right away. I don't know whether it was true or not, whether he was an eyewitness or just heard tales of fellow soldiers, but much later I came across eyewitness accounts that could confirm this horror. The case was in Afghanistan. His company was based in a fortified camp, well protected from all sides, a strategically important position, which was not easy to repel. 100 meters away from it began a difficult-to-pass, huge-sized forest. Between the forest and the camp lay a green glade, which was well shot and illuminated by searchlights. One night, the teacher was awakened by the alarm signal. Everyone took their battle stations. The battle began, everywhere rumbling and burning, and many soldiers were killed on one side and the other. The Afghans were advancing from the side of the forest. They were determined, but in the end they suffered heavy losses and had to retreat. Everything went quiet. In the camp, of course, there was no stand-down command. Everyone was running and fussing until the morning, but there was no order to pursue the enemy. It was decided to remove the corpses from the clearing. When the light began to dawn, there was some fuss in the camp again. But quiet, unspoken and hardly noticeable, the soldiers were whispering about something in a half-voice. A single shot sounded. Our future teacher went upstairs to see what was the matter. At first he didn't understand what he saw, but gradually his understanding grew, and when he looked through the binoculars, his hair stood on end. There were creatures trotting through the clearing near the edge of the forest, creatures that looked remotely like humans, but they were huge, 2.5 meters tall and, as it seemed, covered in fur, moving very fast. They were swarming around the corpses. It was hard to see who they were and what they were doing, and when a spotlight was pointed at one of them for a proper illumination, it immediately slipped out of sight. It looked very ominous. All those who saw it could not open their mouths in horrified amazement, because it was clear that these were not people or animals known to us anyway. Another shot sounded, and the sniper hit one of them. It fell on the grass. As it turned out, he shot the second one to death, but these creatures did not feel any danger and continued to roam around the clearing. They retreated into the forest before the sun rose. In the morning they began to examine the clearing, and the soldiers were met with an extremely unpleasant and horrifying sight. The corpses of many Afghans were mutilated, torn apart and eaten by these beasts. Obviously they were of colossal strength. It was a mess of human remains, with body parts and entrails lying everywhere. Many of the corpses were eaten in the stomach area, you could say, turned inside out. Everyone was shocked. It would seem that the soldiers had seen a lot, but no one was ready for such a thing. The two beasts shot with the sniper rifle had not been found. They had disappeared. Of course, all of this had to be cleaned up, for other common forest dwellers could be welcome, and in the clearing there were flares and stretch marks. A false alarm could be raised. The command strictly forbade anyone to tell anyone about it. In the company, talk on the subject was forbidden. Preventive talks were held with some of soldiers them. In the end, those who witnessed it were made to believe that they were ordinary animals and other nonsense. But the soldiers still whispered, and there were some who had heard something like this before, called them werewolves, but until now had considered them fiction. The teacher, having returned from the army, did not tell anyone about it for a long time, and who would believe it? And it was unpleasant to remember it, moreover, even in the civilian life, for disclosing the secrets of a combat operation is highly likely to get under the article. Even later, when the USSR collapsed, one could talk about it without fear. A couple of times he saw his coworkers, who have not forgotten that night. This story affected everyone who was with him that day.